Cove. A little bit about our exhibit. This pool has about 200,000 gallons of man-made salt water. So this exhibit's about 6 times the size of our previous exhibit. And here at Sea Lion Cove, we have 6 pinnipeds and 2 brown pelicans. So to begin our introductions, we'll start with our brown pelicans. They're working over here on your right-hand side with Katie. Their names are Monterey and Santa Cruz. We call them Monty and Cruz for short. These 2 brown pelicans were once wild birds, but due to wing injuries, they can no longer fly. They were rehabilitated and then sent here to us at Sea Lion Cove, and they do live and coexist with our sea lions and seals. An easy way to tell those 2 birds apart is Cruz is also missing his left eye due to another injury in the wild. But as you can see, these birds are doing great, and they're buddies, so they always hang out with each other. Moving on with animal introductions, I am working with one of our Pacific Harbor seals, Jetta. Jetta is 6 years old. She just had a birthday about a week ago, so she's getting bigger every day. But she's one of our harbor seals. We also have another harbor seal out there in the water working with Jessica, and that is Ariel. You guys might know her. So Ariel is 5 years old, a little bit younger than Jetta. But an easy way to tell these 2 apart is Jetta actually has a red tag on her rear flippers. She got that red tag from her previous home. She lived at SeaWorld Orlando, Florida, and she was in an exhibit with about 50 to 60 other sea lions and seals. Kind of hard to tell those guys apart, so they put that tag on her to help tell her apart from the other animals. Well, she's now here with Ariel, and it's a little bit easier to tell 2 seals apart from each other, but like I said, Ariel is growing up to Jetta's size, so it is helping us. And it's kind of like getting your ear pierced. You don't really feel it after a while, and that's what her tag is. So the day it shows us that, it's bothering her, we'll take it off, but right now it doesn't really matter. We have another pinniped out here for you today, and pinniped is actually a group of marine mammals, and it means winged or feather-footed, the word pinniped, but it includes sea lions, true seals, and then walruses as well. So lots of different animals. And one of our sea lions out here for you today is Wishbone. Wishbone's over here working with Katie. Everybody say hi, Wishbone. Wishbone is turning 8 years old in a couple of months. He's our male sea lion here, but he actually has a wonderful rescue story. He was found out in the wild when he was a young pup, and he was really malnourished. So they actually found out that he's completely blind. He never fully developed eyesight. So just like with humans, there's a rare genetic mutation that causes that. But if you watch the way he works with Katie, he actually uses his whiskers primarily to sense his environment. Pinnipeds have really sensitive whiskers called vibrissae. They actually have nerve endings in them, so they're more sensitive than the tips of our fingers. You guys can imagine swimming through the water and having vibrissae. You can actually sense vibrations in the water. So that's how he finds his way around Sea Lion Cove. And if you watch the way Katie works with him, she uses mostly a lot of verbal and touching cues, basically to better communicate with him since he cannot see her. So she's going to maybe tap on her bucket for him to come over, or she'll tap on his shoulder so he can present a flipper to her, things like that. Give me one moment, I'm going to bring our harbor seal up here on deck. So this is going to segue right into the differences between these animals. So first and foremost, I wanted you to notice how she moves on land. So she moves kind of like an inchworm. That movement you see is called gallumping, and that is what seals do because they don't actually have a rotating hip bone, and they cannot tuck those rear flippers underneath them, so when they move, they're going to move like an inchworm across the land. On the other hand, sea lions do have a rotating hip bone, so they can actually walk on land on all fours, which is pretty cool. You may have seen Wishbone doing that over there. There are a couple of other easy ways to tell these 2 apart, and another way is if you just see their head above the water, take a look at the side of their head. If you see just ear holes like Jetta has, that is a seal. And if you see external ear flaps, like we actually have, the ears that stick out of our head, that is a sea lion. So that's a really easy way to tell them apart too. And those external ear flaps actually are called pinnae. So another word for you guys to learn. Another way to tell these 2 apart is by their front flippers. So if you take a look at Jetta, she has really short front flippers and they do have nails on them. On the other hand, California sea lions will have longer front flippers and they're way more powerful. So they're going to use those front flippers to swim through the water, and they're going to push them so they can give themselves that speed and propel through the water. With harbor seals, the way that they get around in the water is they're actually going to use their rear flippers and they're going to fan them out to give them that power in the water. And they'll use the front flippers to steer left and right as they're swimming. Another easy way to tell these two apart is by the sounds that they make. So California sea lions are much more social. In the wild, they will live. Yay! That was a really good example. Wishbone's showing you how loud they can be. So basically, they're going to bark and communicate with each other that way. They're very loud and they're very social. They can be found in really big groups called rookeries, up to 20 animals together. But harbor seals are a little bit more different. They're going to be more solitary in the wild. They're not going to be in really big groups, and they actually cannot bark. So when they communicate with each other, you're going to hear more of that snorting sound. A really easy way to tell these two apart here at Sea Lion Cove, because we have harbor seals and California sea lions, is by their coat pattern. So if you notice, Jetta does have spots, and California sea lions like Wishbone have a solid coat. But if you go out in the wild looking at seals on the California coast, you might find some seals with a solid coat pattern. Maybe elephant seals, if you guys have seen those, they're much bigger, but they don't have any spots on them. So a little bit different. So a little bit about the training you see here. What we use to work with our animals is called positive reinforcement. It's actually pretty simple. We have their favorite food, which is their fish, and we also have a whistle. So the whistle is going to let the animal know you did that behavior correctly, and then the fish will follow right after. So if you watch the way Katie works with Wishbone, she's going to ask for a behavior, and when he does it correctly, she's going to use that whistle to let him know you did it right, and then the fish will come right afterwards. So if we have an incorrect behavior, what do you guys think happens? If it's called positive reinforcement, nothing at all. So when they do an incorrect behavior or something we don't want, we're simply going to ignore it and we're going to move on. And that's because we want to keep building this trusting relationship between our animals and the keepers that work with them. And if we keep it positive and stress-free, that way we can work on really complex behaviors with them. So you might be wondering, well, why do you guys train your animals? First and foremost is for their own health care. Everything is voluntary, so they're going to participate in their own health care voluntarily. And if they don't want to participate in a training session, that's totally fine, they don't have to. But what you see here is that they stick around and they work with us. It is mentally and physically stimulating, so it's pretty important for these guys. So a little bit about the training. We do a lot of medical husbandry behavior. So something like what Katie's doing right now is she asked him for a down behavior, and then she is basically doing some tactile on his hip bones and his rear flippers, and they're very sensitive areas. So we're not just going to go right in there and start touching him and expect him to be comfortable with that. That actually took a lot of really small approximations. And this is something you can do with your cat or dog at home to give them a better medical check, not just kind of like, come here, dog, and yank him by the chain or something like that. You can do it all with positive reinforcement. So really, really small baby steps. And then we can get to some really interesting, complex, challenging behaviors with these guys. So some other behaviors that we can do is we can train an open mouth behavior, so we can check their teeth. They are born with white teeth, but they do get this bacteria on their teeth that turns them black. And some of it is healthy, but we don't want to get any infections. So we can actually train these animals to allow us to brush their teeth, which is really fun. We also have a couple of really complex behaviors. These animals know how to do voluntary blood draws, ultrasounds, x-rays. They can also get onto a scale so we can check their weight every single week. They regulate their own diets, so it's really helpful for us to be able to do something like weighing them. Thanks, Jess. So I want to talk a little bit about my favorite part, conservation. So how can we help these animals out in the wild and help protect their species for the long run? I do have a question for you guys. How many of you eat seafood by a show of hands? Lots of fish, different types of seafood. Yeah, a lot of you guys. So something that's happening out in the ocean is right now the oceans are getting much warmer. So fish populations in the ocean are going to move further away from shore and deeper into the water to find colder waters to swim in. And so that makes you know, something for a sea lion or a seal to find food. It takes a lot of effort to find food, takes more time away from their pups if they're nursing pups. So what we can do as a human population is decrease our impact on that fish. So not overfishing and eating sustainable seafood. So something that the Monterey Bay Aquarium has done is they've developed a seafood watch program. And that does exactly what I said. It allows us to find out where we can buy sustainably caught seafood and decrease our impact on that fish and leave more food out there in the wild for these guys. I have another question for you guys. How many of you recycle? I want to see all those hands go up. It's really important. Something you might not know is how long trash can last in our oceans. A plastic water bottle can last about 450 years until it's fully broken down. That's a long time. And during that time, an animal like a sea lion, a seal, a turtle, maybe a pelican could ingest that plastic, which may cause them to die, or they can get entangled in some other kind of trash. So what we can do is I encourage you guys to reduce, reuse, and recycle, and put your trash in the appropriate receptacles, and that way we can definitely save a life. So it looks like we're going to wrap up in the next moment here, but I'm going to make my way to the public pathway, answer any questions that you guys have. Once again, my name is Vicki, one of the keepers here. Hope you guys have a great day. Thank you for coming.